angzu shoge tongba ni ane toba ina ane dela tene gyapsumdi ane tardugi kasore tarpa deba ina gyapsum jibu tete ne sanje koncho jibu nge ba tardugi lam ta dunga tadalo gyebe nipa yuwe gyapsumbu jibu inba de dela totuguri esajida dela tene ane jige koncho suma gyapsu juwe gyamro diya gyuwa meba dodo meba jik gituguri ese tempo yunguri ese deshinga tuta juwe digor shurwa.
Good afternoon. So we've continued to look this morning at how when one gains an actual realization of emptiness, it is at that point that one knows that liberation from the sufferings of samsara is entirely possible and achievable by oneself. And thereby, one's refuge, one's conviction in the three jewels is completely transformed, and one's refuge becomes stable, indestructible.
And
if you have questions about this, what we've covered, then please do ask.
I have a question about the course realization of emptiness. Geshe, my understanding is that can happen before a person enters path, and the intelligent person of the Mahayana interest would normally have that before they enter the path.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious about the difference in terms of effect between a valid inference of emptiness and a correct assumption with a correct reason. Because it seems like with the valid inference you still wouldn't have uncontrolled renunciation and there still would be afflictions arising. But what is the difference for the person in terms of moving from a correct assumption with the correct reason to the valid inference?
So with regard to the realization of emptiness before the path, so I'm going to really rework what you said just to make sure I understand it correctly. With regard to the realization of emptiness before the path, this would be a correct assumption with a correct reason.
No.
No? Okay.
That's not a realization.
Okay.
A correct assumption.
So an inferential realization.
A realization would have to be a valid inference.
Okay. A valid inference on emptiness.
Yeah. And the cause for that would be a prior correct assumption with the correct reason.
Okay.
But not understanding the privation.
Okay.
So I'm wondering about the difference between that, in terms of what difference it makes in terms of what the mind is like and how you experience that. Because you haven't entered a path yet, so it's not even uncontrolled renunciation.
Okay.
And I'm sort of thinking about the Mahayana lineage.
Yeah. Okay. So then, what would the experience be like for such a practitioner because they haven't realized the path?
I can't even tell the difference between that as a practitioner moving forward, because how much manifest affliction would the valid inference reduce? It's not really. It's sort of it's powerful in one way, but it doesn't. How powerful is it? What happens to recognize it?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So really, then that's what it comes down to. When one gains the realization of emptiness, as is being referred to here, how does one actually recognize that level of realization has been attained? How would you?
That's right.
What would be the inner sign, so to speak?
That's right. Lama Tsongkhapa says that you don't see any contradiction between, a thing existing as a dependent arising and it being totally empty of any existence from its own side.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the full realization.
Okay.
So what?
Sure.
What would it be?
Sure.
ringeba Kashimba ngeba 동방이 또비 제바게 또바 끼요데 디게네 사월선 데 코롱기 동방이 당보 또바디 제바 참아체기로 와 제바 참아체기로 와 데네 고 람마토 파라딜야 좀 지시고 주로 와데 림바니 니스문구로 와 지시고 주리에 당보 또바디 제바 참아래 지성고 동방이 또바디 간스하고 그래라도 다시 비네 디녜레네 아니 제바 지류 가서 녜레네 송주에 망고 쉬류 동방이 세대 가정에서 셰바나신 로리에 나도 가는 걸 강라이마도 랑 강라이마 랑문이 좀 능고레스 딘나신 다신 집에서나 한 가야만 요 동산 동방이레 세대 망보 퇴방 망보 제로와 데네 퇴방 망보진 디 퇴네 아니 돈다 제바제 삼다 제바지데 타도를 가야만 요 동상지 다 체매 제바 또도 데디 동방이 또되로와 디 또바디 그런 게 유기 또바 체마 제바인자 데디 그런 디 제스 디 체매해 봐냐 봐서 그런 하고 그러거든요 그런 게 또 체마 람사 디 동방이 또변 또 신비긴 디 내가서도 내 동방이 또 선사데 전투에 전기 말에 디 동방이 또는데 그 삼단디 지글하 거소래 디 내다데 냠샤 로지 동방이 장자 섬디거와 디 수양 세양도 직바 어다 니 동방이 또 성이 체마딩이 줄이 계속 배점발리고와 냠샤 말에데 당보 동방이 또데 가야도 동산만 생 가야 등겨 말아봐데 무슨마도 나디 동산마도 두고 유가를 동방이마도 전에요 말아봐데 동이 또배 갑라 그 제바 가하면 봐 동산지 통고로 봐 디마도 전에 통고 말아봐 제가 디 냠샤 라마인데 냠샤 러브로 책으로 냠샤원이데 말에 그 말에 이나 유이들 동방이 가야마도 셴 군주의 책 가야 삼단거 말아봐 동산지마도 요 말아봐 제가 나랑 동이 또 마도 세디 나랑 세 삼단거 말 유이들 동산지마도 두고 전교 디마도 두고 말아봐 다디 딜레 추 안추 당용도 갑라양 안 되지데 오당에 동산 또선 당에 동방이 또선 선비가 삼도 리기로와 네 신이 가야 토비오 말해지 된지 제발해야 돼 동이 동보 또데 제발 치마들와 신이 가야 토비오 말해 아 초람 남고랑 윤이 끼기로와 아니 가래다 지다 람 윤이 끼요 말아 초람 토비로와 람마게 바로와 되다 동방이 당보 따라든 제발 또와 또도 동이 된지 수유 또 바래 무슨 또요 뭐 된지 또 바래 돼 이나 강도의 유진다 유들의 동님마도 생각해야 말해 유들 지사 동선면 매하래 되네 곧나 세야지 삼다야 호랑 땅거 말고 동선 유동산 디 삼다는 뭐 생각해야 말어 되네 수 당도 갑란다 이 동방이 도선선 비삼리기로 와
this person who gains this level of realization of emptiness and has not attained a path, they will do so first in dependence on extensive hearing and reflecting on what they're hearing. So based on this, they can come to generate an inferential valid cognizer in relation to emptiness. In this meditation, all that will appear to them when they are at this, maybe you could say the high point of the meditation, what appears to them only is emptiness. No conventional phenomena appear, no thought of themselves, I'm realizing emptiness, nothing like that, just emptiness. So this is similar to a meditative equipoise. It's not a meditative equipoise, this person hasn't attained a path, but it's similar to a meditative equipoise. After the meditation, then conventional phenomena will arise, and they will then recognize that they have gained this inferential realization of emptiness. Does that answer it clearly enough?
Perhaps if that's good, but what would then a correct assumption with the correct reason in meditation be like? How would that contrast?
How would contrast, yeah.
Ligirwa. Khyabara gandis nyungorase ijugi digi gyumtsen da jebe ijugi jiju digi karing gorasene di jesu jeba tsama ma jeba je dangbo tongying le jeba je iju chili gorwa di iju di le ne ane jeba ma jeba je di che le yang zu da chu jambara chi ma song chu zeba ina tongying jembi ge janshi jen tu yo ma re tongying jembi ge nge tongying do song di do so be ha go tu yo ma re dene tongying do bi ge chama nge ba je sa jeba chama jeba ina di jeso onge di do song so be jamba jen tu go re konyi gar kya ba yo sen jamba jen tu da ma tu kya ba yo re be na ga zu ge ji yu ji mi ge xie bei ji tong wai ne yu xie bei tong wa ji le chen me do me na qi su onge di tong so sen be jamba jen ha gu go ma jamba li go ma de mi ge xie ba di tong ji ne mi ge xie ba di chen me do de na je le onge di de ne xi tong so onge di ne do sam be jamba ji li go re je le ji da de ni la tongying do be ge tongying do ba la dangbo yi tongying do yi ju di ge go ro ni ni ba tongying do be jeba chama gi go ro di ni le kya ba ga yo se ne tongying do be yi ju de la qi su tongying do be tongying jen bi ge jen xie jen tu go jamba jen tu go ma re je le tongying do be chama jeba chama de la chama di gi qi su tongying do be jamba jen tu go re je le ko ni ni be kya ba di le da 간지 등아지를 이주디기 간지를 유들을 미비도 be 이주디기 이주 점비고 도고 얼마도 그 치수 이주디기 유디 점비게 점바 전투 말해서 전투 말해 다 간지를 제바 참아디기 유디를 점비 점바 전투고 그래서 디콘이 켜버디 차고래.
The difference comes down to this, that after one has understood emptiness through correct assumption, one is not able to recall emptiness, recall having realized emptiness. Whereas when one has realized emptiness with an inferential valid cognizer, one is able to recall emptiness. Recall that one's realization of emptiness. Therefore, in brief, the difference between the two is whether one is able to recall one's realization of emptiness or not. There is no mindfulness, but I suppose it's recollection here. Recollection of the ascertainment, the realization of emptiness, if it's just been ascertained with the correct assumption. But with an inferential valid cognizer, afterwards, one is able to recall one's ascertainment of emptiness, one's realization of emptiness.
당보 유직라 시직라 미세 동반이 제바지 이죄계 동반이 도배 체마마 제바이나 안치수 유현의 지로 동반이고 삼다도 동반이 또투 말해지래 가와지어봐 가위데 가와딜라 동반이 제바지 삼다나 가와데 동반이 이죄점이 동반이 또 동반이 체마마도 바이나 치수 분바데 동반이 덴바루버에 말해 제바제바는 분바 동반이 또투 말해래 나 제바 체마딜라 Kawadila, Kawadi Tembatum Chebajina, Kawiti, the Tembamato Tombani to Sevi Jela, Chisu, Shibumbachila, Tombani, Tisinia, Samtana, Chebajin, Bumba, Samtan, Lamsa Tombani to Hedge,
and a further difference would be if one realizes the emptiness of, for example, a pillar with a correct assumption, then that realization would not be, one could not readily apply it to a different object, say a vase. But if one does realize through an inferential valid cognizer the emptiness of a pillar, one can readily apply that realization to a different object of, say, a vase.
대신에 강사의 동반이 또에게 삼라당나 리버디 삼라당와 점게 남사 어디 템바마도 바레스 동반이 또 두그리 해제래 동반이 또 서시 강사게 된도 동반이 또 바이나 다 풍보다 현다 가르데나 동반이 삼는 리버 대신에 강사 템바도 무르 삼단 리버 지어와 김천 지어와 디나 신지 풍보지를 삼당와 점게 남사 풍보디 템바마도 또 두그리 해서 제가다 강사 된도 동반이 마도 바제 강사 동반이 이주 잠이 또 봐지 동반이 체매 또 매바이나 안치수 안 김천 삼단에 풍보 삼단에 풍보된 동반이 또 두 말해지래 혼이 언데
So therefore, when one okay, let's write to these understands that a pillar is empty, and one does so through a correct assumption, one will not be able to readily apply that understanding to another object, of say the vase, without necessarily going through that entire sequence of steps in the meditation. Whereas, if in terms of the pillar, one realizes it is empty with a valid cognizer, one can readily apply one's this realization to another object, say the vase, that it is empty, without now needing to go through all those same steps of the meditation as before.
Okay. I do have 2 questions. Sure.
Good.
Geshe talked a lot about, clarified about the perfected 3 jewels and the provisional 2 jewels. And then he went into explaining that the paragraph underneath the quote on page 25. So then when the certainty will easily arise that the 3 jewels are the sole source of refuge, I just, my understanding, I'm not really clear, but I'm presuming that the 3 jewels there from Geshe's explanation is talking about both the perfected and the provisional in that case. That he's not just talking about the perfected. Is that right? That's the question.
So when one comes to realize emptiness, and one...
no, this is about certainly, the certainty will easily arise that the 3 jewels are the sole refuge. So in terms of realizing what the sole refuge is, it just says the 3 jewels. I presume that that's talking about both the provisional and the perfected.
Okay. Yeah.
Or including both.
Kewa, you know. Then the better the kind of cap chipu secretary captain. Then the capsena, the kind of the limbani something. The makeup down
Tardu.
Makeup and back knee. Then metan the capsena, makeup and back nikarebe.
Dina de sumga niga chanti chuderowa gyapse de jidas de disum gyapse sanje kon chogo giringo chorowa dina de da tardu gyapte ayore nyaga gyapte ayore sumga yore.
Yes, so the text does only say that easily arise with reference to the three jewels, and that would apply to both the perfected jewels as well as the provisional jewels. Yes, for both.
Thank you, Geshe. Then the other question I had was, would Geshe be willing to give a definition of both the two middle way definition of the person?
So, what's the definition of a person according to Svatrantika and Prasangika? Yeah.
Chisa rangi bagi kansa tsenji sidu yigi number sheba chamodi kansa rees and musungu oreje that rangi bigi. Tenjur bigi denegi musung yomar kansa sedi yigi number sheba palu pata bazam chirimado tasam chimado denegi jene and yigi number di kansa rees and zeni nya yomar se. Ta rangi bigi pa shimju che kansa de pa shimju chine pungbo de kansa chagi mindu 는 초와다 두셰다 딘마진 왕셰디게 셰바나네 셰바나야 간사 자기 민도 셰바 왕셰디게 라바레 안디나진 초와 둥아다 대와다 디소에 간사 자기 민도 안에 바바진 간섬질에 이기 넘버 셰바 참모치요레스 이기 넘버 참 다디 간사 레샤스는 딱 우마라주베기 다 도데베트소기 딘 베네파 제바지제 제네 다 이기 넘버 셰바 간사 레스 니고레 제니 녀야지 샤고레 디샤고레제 라주바다 언데디비 지사다 우마 텐주비게 데네게 제는 예요 말해 디네 샤요 말레스 지사 가사사디 파 이기 넘버 셰바 참몰 파 넘버 셰바 참모들 가사스 파로 따바 잡는 마도 제는 예요 말레스 디 캐버디 샤고로 이기 넘버 셰바 참모데 아타케 마도 다 텐주비게 파델레 가사서 따바 잡마도 르바 따바 잡마도 가사데 그리베 풍보데 레말 넘버 셰바네 가르레스 파 제네 되는 예요 말레스 녜바 마 제네 동사 차로 그래서
Svatrantika say the person is the subtle primary consciousness. Prasangika say no such person, no person can be found. So to flesh that out a little bit, a meditator seeking out the person will readily recognize the person is not the body, it's not feelings, it's not sense consciousnesses, it's not any of the mental factors, it's not coarser levels of primary consciousness, and going down and down to subtlest levels. Some who be Svatrantikas or Sautrantikas would come to the point in the meditation of saying, but this very subtle level of primary consciousness, this is the person. This is the person. This is the person. A Prasangika in the same meditation would say, even that is not the person. The person is merely imputed onto, for example, this subtle primary consciousness. Andy?
I have two questions, and one of them was, what's the definition of person according to the Svatrantika? The other one is, I'm confused with this provisional, because the Bodhisattva, the Arya Bodhisattva, has achieved a true path, and it doesn't lose the true path. I mean, that's so. Why is, I don't understand what provisional means here, because it's still an object of refuge.
Yes.
I can't understand, it's the significance of provisional there.
So why is the Dharma jewel in the continuum of an Arya Bodhisattva, in particular the aspect that is a true path, why is this provisional?
Yeah. I understand that when they're not in meditative equipoise on emptiness, they can still see inherent existence that appears, but it's still a true path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lamden. Yomare. Chisangi deji showe kyole deshi kyo nyakapsa dadi bejo yan jemane de yomare se di mare se. Dadi nyakapsa di tar machin ba kap re so nyakapsa de tar machin be kap. Di tar machin be kap ki ani nyomo ba ina pang masawa. Yende ina chisang top masawa. Di masawi ki kap ki nyakap ki kinza de nyakapsa di tar machin be kap ki de ko ko re se. Tar machin be kap de nyakapsa.
What provisional here means is it's not that it comes and goes, but rather that it is not perfected. It's not perfected because it will continue to be developed. It's not yet perfected, and therefore one doesn't say imperfect, but that it can still be developed is the meaning of provisional. Until it reaches the point of this word I'm translating as perfected is when there's not like a single one in English, but it's when you've taken something to the point, developed something to the point of where it can no longer be improved further. So perfect. So it's not yet there. It is still being developed. It's not that it comes and goes, which would be the more normal meaning of provisional, of coming and going, or the translation last night of temporary is very much coming and going. But it means here it is still to be developed further.
di düse di paradil gogorwa chisan mathen ba che kumene ya denigi denu lobjon jeshin be kaptela di nekap se de kap se urwa de chisan kap se dadi nekap ge kabre labdu menigi lobjon je nyamlin jeshin be kap ki nekap ki kapti inza ko nekap kaplare chisan dadi na jin thoram labda pha thon chane gyugde chasa da chane ko ra chawana ko thon charwa da dijan ko lobda 장신 백업 라기 말와 그 턴차와래 그 장신 백업 말에 내가 말을 하기로 제가 내갑스디 디 뒤스 디 값이 그러와 제가데 파비 람귤레기 살제 상마게 바제 되누 롭종 제신베 냠는 제신베 값인자 디 내갑스디 디 내갑기 값들이 해서도 마 파비 람귤레기 상기에 탈마침바 디 바살라기 아니 값인자 내갑 값이 그러대
Because the budget so the drugs in Made, it's negative indicator. Meet up and drop us in like here. Sometimes you're there, sometimes.
Yeah.
Again, I was giving an illustration that someone who is studying for their degree, they would be likened to having the provisional attainment maybe. They haven't yet perfected their studies, in other words, graduated with their degree. So whilst they're engaging in the training grounds of their years at university, they haven't yet perfected their studies. And probably when they get their degree, they'll feel they have. And I also mentioned again, I think the obstacle really comes from this word that are translated as temporary or provisional, because it's used in many different circumstances. So in the dictionary, I'll give you some of the other words, and you can see if something sits better for you, because I think the main obstacle to the understanding is the word provisional, because that means coming and going, which isn't the case. So it can mean also context or condition or circumstance at the time of something, a state, incidental, at present, phases. So in the meantime. So there are many different words depending on the context that it's used. Temporal, state of life, I see another one. Specification, situation. So, so the word doesn't really sit. I don't know, maybe something will come to your mind, and then that will work better than provisional. But
can I ask something very quickly? One other thing.
Sure.
From last night, we're talking about a resultant refuge and cause of refuge. I think I'm misunderstanding, because I always thought the resultant refuge object was your own future realizations. But from last night I gather that it's not something that an ordinary being can take refuge in.
Let me ask Ellen just to re-clarify then the difference between resultant and causal refuge. Okay.
Dan dade nega sangye chumde de na jawron sta bodi ngi gyugebre jawro mche da sangye chumde de jesu ngi gyugebre gyugebre sangye konjore da konju gyulo yede ge lamden da jesu ngi gyugebre konju gyulo yede ge lamden da jesu ngi gyugebre ma ngi debu mare ngi gyure ngale ngi gyuchagoro gyugebre so da ngarangi nyamlin jebala tene maomba na ngarangi gyula kiegi lamde chiyorwa dinge debu jabres ngarangi kale jebche chema ngarang raya chiyorwa dinge debu jabre chesa ngarangi nyamlin jebala tene maomba na nga sangji bige sangji de nge debu jabre nge nyamlin jebala tene maomba nge gyula lamde kiegi lamde de nge debu jabre nge nyamlin jebala maomba na nga sangji paskol 통람 받쳐 파베 가자 차이로 와디 니 데비 겹래 제사디 니 데비 겹래 나 나랑 냠는 제발을 때네 나랑을 두비야지 겹치 나랑 두비어든 겹 차이로 와디 다데 니 데비 겹래 해서 니 냠는 제발 때네 영화에 데부래 다도 요 말에 마음바네 마음바네 요래 다도 용구래 해서 마음바네 다디 데비 겹래 해서 왔다 제사당 나도 탈바 톱다 마톱서야 돼 나한테 제비 겹도 중 용모야 따고 제비 겹도 중에 되네 탈바 톱투고 제비 겹도 맞으나 탈바 톱도 가보러 와.
So from what you just said, your correct, your understanding is correct. If I said something different last night, then I would have made an error. So talking for myself, my causal refuge is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Buddha and Buddha Shakyamuni. For example, the true cessations and true paths in their continuum are my causal refuge. The true cessations and true paths, for example, that I'm striving to develop in the future, that I'm striving now to develop in the future, that now is my resultant refuge. Yeah? So I haven't developed that yet, but I'm striving to develop them, so it's my resultant refuge, the result to come. Whereas the causal refuge is referring to the continuum of other beings. Okay?
And is it only the fully perfected true paths and true cessations, or is it any of them in your own continuum?
In terms of
resultant
refuge.
In the resultant refuge, if I rely, am I relying on all the
yes.
true paths and true cessations to come, or only the perfected?
Yes, okay.
탈두기잡 니가 연구로 와 근데 나 냠는지 통람 토비도 통람 받쳐 쌍마기 왜 내가게 나 파파 차야 되게 되지 대접디 내가게 대접 차로 그라 되네 데니기 냠네 집발은 탈 상계 고방 토여도 탈두기 되게 차는 거. 당보 내갑지 되게 쭉. 당보이 냠네 집발에 가르고선 내갑지 겹지 쭉. 쟤네 데네 탈두기 지제래 탈두기 겹지 쭉. 되게 쭉.
So it's both. It's both. So right now, I'm striving for the provisional refuge, and thereafter, I know it can be developed into the what's the other one? Perfected refuge. So it would be therefore both. Okay.
Yes, Anna.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That then 당한도 된마 대신 소다 대신 현심전 탐지 양랑 냠라 빠데 능얼을 주베 탈바다 탐지 캠비 서로 괴버 되바당.
Let's look at the text. So, continuing in the same paragraph on page 25, starting in the middle of the paragraph. Similarly, in proportion to our own experience, one will aspire to establish all other sentient beings in liberation, that is, in freedom from suffering, and on the ground of omniscience.
다 대신 세딩은 저 쇼베샤바 시그로와데 베네가 저기 곧 지게 나와 땡진 저와 중화 삼대 베네가 저기 동화세데 가르레션스 유군주 템발레 중그레 군주님의 규단 가르세 뇽모 바디야 자와 딘세 마릭바딜레 중우도 세도 침지 제바제 데니 제바제도 갑라 데니 동반이 또해도 다 군주님 템바 뇽모 빵베 빵바 톱투구도 제산지디 아니 사유권조 톱투 소소랑랑기 다 통해도 소소랑 산지고중이다 산지고조 가서래 최권초 냠년전에 빵 투구요 바다 산지고보 톱투구요 바다 소소랑한 게 또고로 와다 또 봐서 대신세 또 봐서 대신 또 대신세다 라는 게 대신 쇼베 시행은 소소랑하나 땅아 탈바 톱투도 냠년전에 디고민제다 람데 냠년 제고 디 냠년 제발에 때네 뇽모 빵도 디 빵에도 가 탈바 톱투도 셈비게 디도에도 디기 냠 소수기다 데네 냠용세페 데네들 현심제 탐제야 랑게 냠라 빠데스도 니 냠는 제발에 데네 딘 톱투구요나 데네 심제 샹다디기 냠는 니 냠는 제반 두시 냠는 제바이나 인탈베고 와 톱투구리 사지 제사 현심제 탐제야 랑게 냠라 빠데 동알로 조베 탈바당 제스 동알로 조베 탈바 톱투구도 와스 돌바다 데네 자다 데니게 투구요 바에나다 가려어서 돌바다 탐제기며 고방라 괴되어 봐서 오당의 콘솔레 람띠 탑람띠 콘솔레 배주에지 거번 랍제기 땡제 콘솔 냠는 제도나 대상예 상예의 상예사를 그 투구도 톱사랬다 세디 안 되어버리게 제사 샘제 탐제 상제 고방 톱 투구도 대사 네 콘솔레 파시 냠는 제주 바에나 이 샘제 탐제 상예사를 그 톱사래 세비게데 딘 하고 투구래 탐제기며 싸고 되어봐다 지도다 메셈제 탐 데니 하고 해도 데니 메셈제 탐제 산조고 받을 꾸긴 선배게 되바디 베 지금 뽑아다 닝도 없다 되바디 숙천부 안에 교환해 봤지 도구리 해서 지금 되바다 말말 셈제시오라 그 되바서 지디로와 제가 당보 가르서는 소수기 냠는지는 뇽모 빵 투구 타버이바 또 투구로 와다. 네 투구에는 네 냠는지는 타바 톱투구에나 결혼에 냠는지는 타바 톱투구 그에 냠는지는 타바 톱투구를 해야지 하고 투구로 와다. 네 하고요도 아니 가르서 땅 그래서는 네 콘솔이야 로종을 가서 냠는 제주 판도제 되는 시에는 네 산예 셈제 탐제 산예가 산이 그 투사래다. 투구도 세비게 통해도 안에 산이 고방 셈제 탐제 산예살로 꾸긴 셈비게 꾸긴 셈비게 되바디다. 되냐기 듬바디 안에 네 약보시 땜부실이 해서 탐제 캠베 사 고발 되바. 되냐 고되기 듬바디 안에 랍친지기 되체래.
Similarly, in proportion to our own experience. Now this refers to what's been presented previously in this paragraph. So firstly, through having heard many teachings, reflected well, and gained a realization of emptiness, one, and in relation to what's presented in the very first line of the paragraph, one's refuge becomes transformative and stable. And moreover, this develops further into one's determination to gain freedom from the sufferings of samsara, so definite emergence. This also arises in a powerful way. In other words, one's striving for liberation. So this has all come about through having reflected well on the sufferings of samsara, the origins of these sufferings, and that those origins can be eradicated through cultivating true paths, in particular that of wisdom, and thereby true cessations can be attained. So this recognition that is now known to be true because one has gained a realization of emptiness has led to this powerful, stable refuge, as well as definite emergence, determination to abandon samsara. So that is what is implied by simile in proportion to our own experience. That is the experience one has attained. Now, one applies this to others. And the sentence continues, one will aspire to establish all other sentient beings in liberation. That is freedom from suffering. So up to this point, one has seen that I've realized emptiness. It is possible to attain liberation from samsara, to destroy the root cause. And if I can do that, so can every other sentient being be guided to that same place. So that's the meaning thus far. So every being, not just me, can attain liberation from samsara. And the sentence continues. And on the ground of omniscience. So what's here a little bit hidden in that brief last part of the sentence is that in order for me to do that, to lead all beings to their own liberation, I have to become a Buddha. I have to attain Buddhahood myself. And as I can attain Buddhahood, so too can others. So I can lead them not only to liberation from samsara, but to Buddhahood itself. So this all comes about in dependence on the prior realizations.
탑람 가네스 냠렌지 타바 투기여 바다 타바세야디 세명에바 마니에바 이제 안디나시 상기고방 토야게 탑람디 지야고 마신 바지 안 상기고방 톱투비 투기여메 세명에바 소수게 세명에바 마니에바 있나 나 소소아이나 상기고방 톱투베다 타바 톱투기여메 땡케바지 하고고 말와 미션다 심전 탐정에 타발로 끼긴 안 상기슬로 거긴 세디 다디 투기여나면서 몇 도과사디마도 아데 땡쇠지래요 말와 다 매바자 다 소수 딘두 진의 소소라는 둥아 삼다 둥의 귤파 삼 제바제 딘바 진의 묘몽베 자위데 다 딘지 마릭버레샤 삼 제바제 다 딘지 마릭버데 빵 투구 뒤에 민의 제바 딘딩의 남자 삼다이도 동방에 또루그레서 동방에 또어도 되는 아랑게 딘진 빵 투구여 바다 안 타바 톱 투구여 봐 안디야 동바도 장슈심 육군에 나제 동방에 도 셔러 공바이나 안 산주고바 톱 투구여 바디 다고 금천 마두시네 차상하듯 섭랄 마소나 차상지 녀바로 세명 녀바 녀서로 봐. 단 녀바 인자 당보 그런 세만이 세명이여도 세명 녀바 녀바자 다 안고 대제를 가르삼 그러시네. 오다 심지 탐지 둥알을 주베 타르바셔야 돼. 다 변에 장슈 심지 탐지기 돈다 냠는 지마도 봐나 그런 탈비 돈이지 냠는 제제 안에 다 동방이 삼다 두시 냠는 제바나 심지한테 탈바 톱투도 동알 주베 타르바 톱투도 다 장슈 심지 군에 나지 되는 냠는 제바이나 네 산지고 뭐 톱투도 되는 인자 네 콘솔야 안에 심지 되게 안에 변에 가시 다직 태시 태바침비게 되면 되게 안에 거서 야 탈베고 봐라 거기 있으니 냠네 네 콘솔 탈베고 봐라 거기 있 그 투구도 거기 인생비 다 심지 상다디게나 상지 심지 탐지는 그게 상지 살야 거기 인생비게 지사 심지 타르발을 고판을 거봐 두바다 상이슬로 거에 되바 되녀기 둠바디다 그 땡세로 와서네 하고 전에 될야 안지 뽑아다 안에 닝도부터 얘기를 해야지 나디 숨도 와
before one gains this realization of emptiness, this initial realization of emptiness, one is likely to already have a good intellectual understanding of the path and how to achieve it. But despite one's good education and excellent meditation, not yet having given rise to a realization of emptiness, this all remains to a degree on the level of theory. It remains theoretical that liberation is possible for oneself. So therefore, there is some doubt in one's mind that it is truly possible for oneself. So maybe here, I'm just again looking at the dictionary because the word doubt isn't so good, but maybe there's some suspicion or misgiving, some hesitation in the mind that, can I really do it? Is it really possible? One hasn't completely eradicated that. And the result of this doubt is hesitation in application. But when one does realize, gain this initial realization of emptiness, doubt is eliminated, which means that due to the power of the inner confidence that arises, that the path is correct, is valid, and attainable for myself, hesitation is gone. Moreover, one, through reflecting then that if I can attain liberation, so too can others. I therefore just need to generate bodhicitta, and then whilst generating bodhicitta also develop my realization of emptiness, and then Buddhahood is attainable. And I will be the most skilled of guides, and I can lead others. I can lead them to, depending on their own predisposition, to individual liberation or omniscience as well. This is all possible. So this comes about through the eradication of doubt and hesitation, through the initial realization of emptiness.
shandachi kyaqab shanda Australia kyaqab pato hoyena tangbo ane kare to hamogal kan ligina sampe sosora to boyore ane sosuge shandati imidi tijo samna tiya gyo de tituena kan stigena sampe da jigorwa da tangbo khoro sosora droya ge droya de kare nga phane drawala an twingen kare ko chajin kare 고구도 세배 파 심죽제 차상 심죽제 안델야 차긴 되네시 고구레 디스 차상제 소수에 지 아니 튕긴디게 데디디 고구레 디 차게잖아 차상 페닐레 두고 살아야돼 뒤지티니 실리게 세베데 베네 지게 통진 휴고야 넘들지게 또 고야 안 되네디 패기디 줘야 되는데 차상 튕기를 차상 튕긴 좀 받아 차상와 줘봐는 되네지 줘봐 차상은 페닐레 두고 봐디 곧 소수의 심죽제데 제바자 하고 살아와다 세명해봐 예서와 예서나 다 미션다 치고에네 콜에 튕긴 다나진지 코 튕긴 로바지 튕긴 루투고에네 코네 페닐레 두고로 봐 지상 그 소수기 파드에게 튕긴 당 안지 내가 제가 차상한테 하고에도 니 냠용을 토네 샹다델레 튕긴 디나신다 책임 디나 사나 페니 조투고레서 그 하고 두면서 고즈야 티에기 안되발마서 네티로가 강하천 경화디 지고를 네티로가 써야 되고 보고 첨부지 레기로와 디나시 소속의 냠냐제도 전에 산지 탈베 토예게 탑라 남 냠는 림바디 파 유예제 파 하고 데니진 디조 니바디니콤 데니선 타바 톱투도 세베 삼로지 소술이야 땡슬이야도 데니 오다딩이 샨다디기 니 람된 제제 콘소에 타발이야 치긴 세베 삼로다 데니 콘소에나 산예살이야 기긴 세베게 삼로디 고 보고 침비토네 안 땡스디 리고 레셔.
To make an analogy, if someone who hasn't really traveled much has decided to move abroad, they won't really know what that involves, and they'll have quite some hesitation. To bring about their emigration, they will have to gather knowledge, do some investigation, find out what is required to move somewhere. Perhaps they're wanting to come to Australia, and they will do quite a lot of investigation, speak to people with knowledge and experience, and thereby find out all the steps that need to be followed in order to be able to move to, say, Australia. When they've got all the knowledge and they are accomplishing the steps that are required, for example, they've applied for and then got their visa, they've booked their flights, they've packed what they needed to, then they have quite some confidence. And you can be sure they'll be telling anyone else they meet who has an interest to emigrate what needs to be done, because they now have confidence in what they're doing, and all the more so when their journey has begun. So similarly, when we start out, and we start gathering knowledge and integrating that knowledge, understanding the levels of training, starting to gain some experience of this, we now have some confidence, but still some doubt, some hesitation. But when we gain transformative experience, that is gone. We now know that this destination that we desire is attainable. It's not beyond us. It is really possible. And with this confidence, we then can immediately embark on benefiting others. So this then is similar to what we've looked at here in this verse thus far, which first laid out the impact that the initial realization of emptiness has on our refuge, thereafter on our definite emergence, and now in this sentence, on our bodhicitta.
닝지 샘젤라 미베 동안데도 니 학바도 닝지 기투그레 사다 동방에 또바나 샘제 탐제 코위 동안에 저지 야상예설로 고여긴세 학산 남다 기투그레세 다디디디스고 제가 데니게 소수기 동방에 또바나 딩이 냠라 빠베기 샘제 탐제 탈바당 탐제 캠베서 고드 고버 되바시도 학산 남다디 학바도 기투그레세 다디디스고 다디.
When one gains this transformative initial realization of emptiness, immediately thereafter, powerful compassion will arise for others. Now, a practitioner will already have compassion for others, but here, seeing that the possibilities are true, powerful compassion will arise for suffering mother sentient beings. And this enables the rapid attainment or generation of the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility.
알고 되네 데일리도 랑기 장수 온도 자대비 장수 셈자 신도 땜보당 지대다 제자 데일리도 제다 셈자 탐제 상예설로 고우도 셈비 고디비 학산 학바도 동인 또바이나 디진엘 셰바 동인 또바라 때네 셈자 탐제 코르 동안에 잡아도 니 제고도 셈비 학산 남다디 아니 죽셔버기 두고레스 니게어도 가르쳐서나 되네 샘제 탐제 상예설로 고바 장주 원도 자베기 장주 셈자 신도 땜보기 그랬지. 다 인상의 셈자 탐제기던 상예 고파 다 톱투구도 톱야기 람데네 냠는 데네 시고 인상 상제 고파 톱투 지상의 셈자 탐제 상제 고파 톱아 지긴 세베게다 하바도 장주 셈디야 아니 즉 마게바네 깨야야 아니 뉴알야다 깨차와나 아니 빼 땜보 그래서 교환해봐 땜보 용해야지 용그래 해야 돼.
Continuing, in order to achieve this, a great force will arise, an extremely stable and immensely powerful bodhicitta. The aspiration to actually obtain enlightenment ourselves. So again, I read half of it, but in our English it's a bit mixed. But this is similar to what has just been mentioned in the previous segment. When this transformative initial realization of emptiness is attained, thereafter, compassion will readily arise for suffering sentient beings, because one knows for oneself, I can attain liberation from suffering. All these other beings do not yet know this. These beings who are bound in suffering do not yet know that it's possible. And thereafter, one readily gives rise to the altruistic attitude of universal responsibility, because one knows that the paths are attainable. One will readily take on the responsibility that the arisal of compassion entails. I will lead others to a state freed of suffering. That then, in turn, leads to either the relatively easy generation of bodhicitta itself, the determination to become a Buddha, so as to lead beings to a state freed of suffering. So that's one possibility, the new attainment of bodhicitta. Or if bodhicitta has previously been attained, but is not yet stable, this realization of emptiness will make bodhicitta stable.
Temboda, then top chin the gate to by J. Junwa Ino, said that Janju Sem said, and the Bene Gasore, Domba Toba Ina, Semjan Tamju, Tang he Semjan Kuru Dungal, Jajia, Sanja Sala Kugi, Sibi, Hasan Namdatia, and the Temboda, top chawa, top chin the gate to Gres. And then Semjan Sanjo Kovala, Ningi Sanjo Kovata, top Yamlin, no top two to Tobiagi, Lam Dinish to top two Sempige, the Seming Evan Yavanza, the Nate Janju Semja Sanjo Kovata or Show Sempi, Semen there, and Janju Sim Dembocina, and how top chamber to Gigres, top chin get to Gres said, the Nigger and then the Hungry said.
I'm going to read the rest of the sentence, but the meaning is as presented already. That there is this sequence of trainings, that the sequence of results that follow from this initial transformative realization of emptiness, the impact it has on one's refuge, on one's bodhicitta, on one's definite emergence, and now on compassion, and thereby one's altruistic attitude and bodhicitta. And again, if bodhicitta had already been generated, it now will become stable, or alternatively, it will be newly generated.
Nanganjugi Lushine, Dongbai Matobaina, that's on you go on, can it Tugu, but the Sebuji Haguma, that's on you go on yours, the Toba Jigin Sebi, some Roshi Tamba, the top degree Dumbarochi, then the Yobaneta, can it Tugu, Tobia, when it then took Tugu, says, then the Tugu Sigurwada, can it say the Sanji Sungudu was a bit, the Lami Sungudu was a bit, Mato, Shan Gimzaka shit to Yamarva. That Sosuki never Chevachi, Tomba, Tobaina, Sanjiko top two grass, to be Gimzakaras, did it, the Mavasation did it, such a called Yomo by the Mava, Savana Basha Pansana, did Sanjeri, Sanja Charugures. Chisn Basha Bombala Karagongo, Tongo, changes in Mugunela, Tomba Combine, Basha Japan to Gures. Dine Hagoenza, Sosuki, Tomba, Chanjusim, Gialia, and Chanjusim, Mageba in a Mageba, the Gialia, and Bejic. New get to Yada. Get Simban and she to bed, Dimbo, top chamber chair, Gangi, and Guameba Chatuya. And Dinashin, Shan Semja and your Korea do not let that, Durang two to Chesang, David chicken, Sebegida, Nindo flower get to ya, and Guameba Lava get to ya, they did the Yunguri said, Chisan Tomba and Tobaina, the Niggy and then Cavar the Papa, the Yunguri said, this one do I don't know.
The position that we find ourselves in now, not yet having given rise to a transformative realization of emptiness, is we will all accept that Buddhahood is attainable. And when we ask to explain why, well, we may be able to present a number of logical reasons, but we don't yet really know that they are true. Largely it still comes down to, well, because Buddha Shakyamuni said, because my Lama said so, so therefore. But when one gives rise to this initial transformative realization of emptiness, because now one knows that the root cause of all suffering, the ignorance of true grasping, can be eradicated because I have experienced the antidote, we will know that freedom from suffering is possible. And because that is possible, complete freedom is possible in the sense of omniscience is attainable. We will have that level of unwavering faith in the teachings of the Buddha, because something that was previously hidden to us has now become clear. And this transformation is what leads to the rise or the generation of bodhicitta, which is extremely powerful and immensely stable.
And this Shazan, Tomba, you topic, Tomba, you topa, and then this Yungres, Tony topic, Yendero, Shagdoa, as a dish, Kazani, Shubanashi, Sugar Shubanashi, Tomba, you topa, Tumba Sanya Jim, and the Tumba Sema in Bahago to Gure said. Dongbani Toba in the Delight in the Dombashaya to Sumbi, Sungdi, Semai Bang, never need to raise. That Dongbani Toba in the Sangelia, and the Kasoshin, Devatoba, Devati Gigri, Gombulu Blasoba, the Rang, Deni Lamala, Rangi Lamdenja Lamala, Shin, Devatoba Ligres. And the name is an Japsum, said, and that's Sangi, Jig, Tarba, Susura, Tarba Dubaina, that the Lamden Jigindi, Sanya Jumde, the Manova, and Tartuk together, Sanya Jumde, Jibur said, the Jibu in Bangi Tuya. And the Kasore, Yamlin Jeba, Tarba Tobala, Gordin Toku, Gordin, Numo Bobby Gordin, Matomna Tarbatum, Tarbala, Numo Gordin Jiburesha said. Ditoya Lamdia, Lamyam Legend, Toku, Sepi. Dichazada, Denigi, Tonadu, and the Tomba in Dobe, and then Desolatine. The Niligo, Jizan Tabato, Tabaduni, Dumbadi, and Jabra Dimboyova, Tabaduni, Dumbadi, Dimboyova, and Dimaze that day, she has some gent, Shamlet me page, Ninji, and Hawar to Pewa, and she had some gentlemen don't want to travel to Jibba, Lassam Namda, said the hand Hawar to Pea, and this some gentlemen in the San Yokoba, Tober should be Janju Sem de Hawar to Janju Sem Majabada, Jitiso knew the Kiada, Jabana, Dimbuda, and the Top Chimbo child, Dennis Yunguri said, Chazada Tomba you do big, you ended in the Yunguri said, to see the Jido.
What we've been looking at then is benefits of realizing emptiness. And these are benefits that are attained at the initial point of realization. So firstly, one comes to generate transformative faith arising from knowledge in the three jewels. Seeing that the founder teacher, as well as all other Buddhas, are perfected beings, are valid or authentic, and therefore worthy of relying on wholeheartedly. And therefore, so too are their teachings. Their teachings now, we recognize for ourselves, are unmistaken, and therefore we will generate the determination to cultivate them within ourselves. Then in terms of the Sangha jewel, those great pandits from ancient India, as well as the Lamas from Tibet, and our own Lamas, our own teachers, we will recognize they are our companions and suitable to rely on too. So in this way, we give rise to stable, transformative refuge, because it's based on this faith that has arisen through meditative experience. Moreover, our determination to bring an end to suffering through the cultivation of true paths and the attainment of true cessations, the determination to emerge from samsara will be immense. In this way, there's this transformative impact on our definite emergence. So these minds, to some degree, refuge and definite emergence, we would have generated previously. But now, from realizing emptiness, they too are immensely powerful and extremely stable. And thereafter, or there too rather, it's all coming together, compassion will arise for suffering mothers. This compassion will be significantly more powerful than the compassion that we had previously cultivated, and will readily lead to the generation of the altruistic attitude, because we know that if liberation is possible, so too is enlightenment. I can do so, and have a responsibility to do so. And that then leads to the determination to become a Buddha for the sake of others, and the arisal or strengthening of bodhicitta. And in this way, through the initial realization of emptiness, refuge, definite emergence, and bodhicitta all become extremely stable and immensely powerful.
And then, Dedavi Chaching Sabla, Dunchivi, Dongyi Dawadi, Ngejunga Sambi Kune Langde, Kimbada Rabjungi, Tsurim Jiriji, Sungyu Gwane, and the Solam Yenegapso, Tersam Gomsum Yi, Yang Gombar Jebi, Rimgi Dawadi, Dongyi Dunji Tsuyi, Do Bigi, Shila Sonji, Shila Songje, Gi, and the Gomjundu, Gurde, Jolam Top said.
And moving on in the text, so again, just to say the outlines or something I inserted, so they're not actually in the Tibetan text. His Holiness didn't write them. So moving on to the next outline. Similarly, whilst on the path of accumulation, with a motivation of definite emergence, on a foundation of any of the forms of ethics, for either the ordained or non-ordained, we familiarize ourselves through repeated study and reflection on the subtle and deep view of emptiness, which is of great value. As our view of emptiness develops successively, the path of preparation is attained when emptiness is realized by means of a meaning generality on the basis of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight.
지산 동반이 유 동반이 도베 로디베 지 로디 참모레스 로 차신 사바레스 대다디 된 첨부 쉬우제 된다베 디냠 줄에 깨와나 된다 첨부레스 지산 된다 첨부 되니게 돈이 따와디서 지산다 유고 동반이 도베 로디 차와 임비 김제가서 유 동반이 도에 동바 호랑 차 동바 유 동반이 차와 인자 네하고 그 로디야 참모 차용으로 지산 유 동반이 호랑 사모르와 사모 인자 라과 말 사바 사모인자 디도벨로 디아 사모세 제가 유동방이 또 유호랑 동방이들 먼저 또에는 참모다 사모인자 동방이 도벨로 디아 참모다 사모레세 나 차신 사플라세 디소르
Looking at the first bullet point, so in the first bullet point, the Tibetan and English aren't in the same order. So it starts at the beginning of the bullet point and then immediately goes to the end of it. So first of all, it says simile. So this immediately shows the context is continuing from what we looked at before, which is referring to the wisdom realizing emptiness. And this wisdom realizing emptiness, now we go to the end of that first bullet point, is, let's get this right. The wisdom realizing emptiness is itself a subtle consciousness. So what we have here, the subtle and deep view of emptiness, which is of great value. This then refers to the object, emptiness, is something subtle and deep, and as the object, emptiness, is subtle and deep, so too is the consciousness that is realizing it. If the object is subtle, the consciousness that realizes it will be a subtle consciousness that is subtle as well.
단디네 동방이 또 비로디에는 차싱의 사바레스 안 된체와레스 된다 침보레지레 지산 된체와 임박하르스 동방이 또 별로디 빼 된다 침보레스도 빼내가 이게 된체의 김차라서 빼 디기 동방이 또 별로디 곰발라 때네 아즈레 대시 연된 빠도메 봐야데 연된 빠도메 때네 용고레 디 무디 곰발라 때네 탈베 고바 톱두게 탐제kim베 고바 톱이 또 고바 토에게 연된 탐지 중요해 동방이 또 곰발라 때네 연된 중두고레 당아 지금 요모바 빵해야 돼. 먹어야기 둥하다 요모디 규다집어 차상 한 동방이 또 별로디 곰발라 때 매바스 두고 제사 동방이 또 별로디 된다 침부시우시레서 제사 빵자 요모바 차상 디 동방이 또 별로 곰발라 때네 매바스 두고 톱자 윤내 차상 동방이 또 별로디 곰발라 때네 톱두고 여바 인자 다 동방이 또 별로디 빼마서 된다 침부레서 예 침부시우시레서 예 침부시우시레서
Continuing to look at the end of this first bullet point, the subtle and deep view of emptiness. Then, as mentioned, this must be understood as referring to both the realized object, emptiness, being subtle, as well as the realizing consciousness. Needs to also, therefore, because the object is subtle, the consciousness too needs to be subtle. And this, a view of emptiness, is of such great value for all the reasons that have been mentioned thus far. The transformative impact it has on our refuge and on our definite emergence and our bodhicitta, because its independence on developing our wisdom realizing emptiness, that liberation and enlightenment will be attained. Here now, this realization, having a realization of emptiness, this is of great value to one, because one knows that one can abandon all the objects that need to be abandoned. In other words, the afflictions, together with their seeds, and even their imprints, their stains. All objects of abandonment can be abandoned. So hence, it's of such great value.
아니 예중 삼바마게 베네 람 규리게 두고 말아. 지난 예중 삼바마게 나 돈도 베가지 검데베네 탈바 탐지 힘에 고와 토투 말해. 지난데 디네자 당보 예중의 삼배 꾸네라데스데 디네 가지고 예중의 삼배 당보 예중의 삼배 규리게 고르지. 예중의 삼바세도 코외 동화될 탈고구도 선배 탈제 탈바세도 코외 동화를 돼 탈바스 토고도 선배 삼로디 장전에 디쩌마 많이 봐 규리게 고르해서 당보 다진 디네기 다 탈베 탐지고 탐지김be 고바 토발라 탈보다 탐지김be 고바 토발라 당보 먼저 람 냠는 제고로 람 귤레게다 마게 세디 가제 자기레스네 미중의 삼보 검제 미중의 삼보 쩨마 많이 받지 가도 귤레게 손바나 다람 귤레게 살래 미중의 삼보 쩨마 많이 받기면나 먼저 람 귤레기고 말 되네자 당아서 람 귤레게 와라 당보 가르고 것은 미중의 삼바도 검고래제 이제 예중의 삼바 검제 되는 예중의 삼바 쩨마 많이 받게 디다 예중 삼바 쩨마 많이 받게네 되네 내내 거소래 아니 제 게요도 람로 슈루 그래 세상 군로 동방이 타바 다 탐지 캠프 고방 토야기 동방이 공발라 당보 예중의 삼바도 고고래서 예중의 삼배 군의 랑데에서 예중 삼바 고고래서지 말 동방이 또바 이나양 탈바 톱투고 말해시래. 또나양 아니 예중에서 만마게나 동방이 가지고 겁나 탈바 톱투야 말해시. 제자다 예중에 삼바 고고리에스. 제자 동방이 가지고 겁나야 람귤에 깨면나 탈바 톱투야 말와. 제자다 당보 탈바 토야라 아니 동방이 검제 탈바 토발라 예중에 삼바 깨고리에스. 람로 슈고 고레스 그러다 람로 슈발라 예중에 삼바데 깨고고레스.
Continuing in the paragraph, and again just to say the English and the Tibetan really are not in the same order, so we bounce around a little bit. Now we're in the first line, with a motivation of definite emergence. So here, as was mentioned earlier, to come to a realization of emptiness, one needs to be reflecting on the sufferings of samsara and its causes and so forth, in order to actually engage in meditation on emptiness. However, whether one has, even if one realizes emptiness without having generated uncontrived definite emergence in one's continuum, one will not be able to achieve liberation. So I'll say that again. Even if one has this first profound level of realization of emptiness, one will not merely from that be able to attain liberation unless one develops uncontrived definite emergence. Therefore, uncontrived definite emergence must be generated, because without generating uncontrived definite emergence, a path will not be attained. Without a path, one cannot progress to liberation. So therefore, whether one realizes emptiness before or after the generation of uncontrived uncontrived definite emergence must be generated in order to attain liberation.
다니네 예중의 삼바 semje 탐지 가서 예중 콜위 동아 타달을 저기 탈바셔야 돼요. 아니 방바도 토고도 sembe게 대진 예중 삼바곰 예중 sembe 군의 랑디에서다 예중 sembe 군의 랑에 안 가르고 냠는 가르치어 버렸으나 김바당 안에 랍중의 주림 지리송신스 김바이나 안에 그 김비기 도마스에 도마스에 융아 있음 예제된 주림소야 다 랍중이네 주림소야 지다다 그런서 니가서 랍중을 주림 가 지망아 지어와다 제자다 간실레 김바이나다 랍중이나다 데네기 내중 삼바 타로 토구도 샘비게 거기 동안을 줘야지 탈고도 샘비게 삼베 디군에 라한제네 아니 추림송 시추림송제 아니 추림송제 아니 안디가르서도 초사고래제 추림이 시송의 관에 시송세의 담보 추림송고래제 담보 시송세 당보 예중계 산에다 예중계 산에 다 냠는 지야 될라 가르지오스네 근데 추림송고래 해야 돼. 다진 망아지 디말 그승에 마시마 람 냠는 지라 타르바다 탐지 김에 고번 토발아야 진바 추림 서바 전주 삼대 셰랍디 냠는 지고래스 탈바도 육군에 나지 산지 고번 토발아야 전주심 육군에 나 진바 추림 서바 전주 삼대 셰랍디 냠는 지고래 냠는 지가 디레스 제가 디네자 당보 예중에 삼바 좀 많이 받지 게 세외제 되네 진바도 추림 쇠바 삼된 디수 냠는 제 시고로 와지산 디수고로 냠는 제 진바데 가라서네 되네 추림이 시송 추림 송고래서
The sentence continues with the motivation of definite emergence on a foundation of any of the forms of ethics for either the ordained or non-ordained. So this then refers to when one now has generated uncontrived definite emergence, one needs to engage in a variety of further trainings in order to bring about the attainment of one's spiritual goals. For example, ethical restraint, restraining one's body, speech and mind through either the taking of the vows of the non-ordained or taking of the vows of the ordained. This is then presented, what is implied behind that is that now, having generated the uncontrived determination to bring an end, to gain liberation from samsara, one needs to cultivate extensive virtue through ethics, generosity, patience, and so forth, all the way up to wisdom. All of these need to be engaged in order to fulfill the aspiration that our uncontrived definite emergence holds as its goal. So therefore, ethics and so forth need to be practiced.
다 추림 시송에 다 저 추림 시송제 추림데 배 심하지 가서 추림 세대가 주인된 된도 기사에 사지 나신지 연대 차상 기사에 추림 소야 되리 추림 마송바이나 아니 아주 류가 이수면 예제 마된 바나 안데 류가 예바사기 세지 람 검토에 매로 지선 추림 시송 다 시송요 토네 아니 초람니 내갑소 퇴섬 곰숨 야양제세 지자다 초람 내가서 다 예중 선바 쩨마 많이 받기 되베자 초람 중우차도 초람 차대로와 예중 선바 쩨마 많이 받기 와서 람규래 계사를 초람 중우차를 초람 다 되네 수름 송데 수름 송제 니 시소네 다디 내가 초람이 내가 중이 내가 퇴섬 곰숨데 퇴섬데 야야지 그래지 망아디 퇴양 최망의 쉬야다 안디 된다 야네야도 삼다야 아니 되네 곰야데 지자 조 퇴섬 곰숨 나네 퇴바다 삼바지야 나디 곰바 제고래세 퇴섬 곰숨 퇴섬 야양 곰바 제베세 지사데 숨바로와 퇴바지 당보 퇴바지 삼바지 되네 곰고래세지 나디 등아 저 디용을 가리 냠내지 가리 튀어오는 마 쉬어 가리 라메 가나 디디 제거를 쉬어 줘로 받아 소람 나는데 내가 또 소사야기 수남이 소사야기 내가 치고래 소사 대 지단 조서다 조 망아로지 대 망아다 담보디 코 사바 인자 망아 튀어오로 와치 먹고 쉬우마도 하고 그 말지다 얘네 망고 퇴사는데 그 검제야 조리기로 와. 지나 다디디 가서는 그 람사우수자 그 퇴가야 장고야 망고 쉬고로 와. 지나 예인전 장고야 망고 쉬어서 퇴섬 조지제. 아니 저 다 검고 말선 검도 검고 뛰어서 검고로 와.
And the Tibetan concludes, so continuing to read in English, we familiarize ourselves through repeated study or hearing and reflection. So that's how the Tibetan concludes. This then is stating explicitly the need to engage in the practice of ethical restraint. But implicitly, it implies all 6 trainings. The reason ethics is the one single out to focus on, the reason why ethics is the one that's singled out, is because ethics is the indispensable foundation in which all good qualities grow. It's likened to a fertile soil within which all good qualities can sprout. Hence, ethics is explicitly mentioned. Implicitly, one understands it applies to all 6 trainings. So having generated uncontrived definite emergence, one enters into the path of accumulation. The primary activity on the path of meditation is hearing and reflecting. The primary activity on the path of accumulation is accumulating virtue, is engaging in the accumulation of virtue through hearing and reflecting. And that is explicitly stated here, but just a sec. Whilst it's explicitly stated that the primary activity is the accumulation of virtue through hearing and reflecting, secondary activities would include meditation as well as the accumulation of wisdom. But the primary activity is the accumulation of virtue through hearing and reflecting on ethics and so forth.
That solam delang and solam chungo that jing dang chembo set ligirwa, I chungo the dangbo, Bubul in the chunchun near Cheshire, Mother Jinajiro would be chunchun jetin, but Chuchu didn't lo chimbucharwa, Mother Jinajiro, that's the solam chungus, solam dangbo, the chungu chagurwa, then about those comjite, jing chai. Then margin does yar here the chamber chagirwa. Chesada solam, tang you samba juma maiba, tangbo ye the solam chunguri. The Niki Savichelia, so chewing negas manchi, turbata samba, turbiki, manga lobjon, chemango shuada, then donaliana and sometime. Manga the chigor, the comia de so gumgora, the cum to gumgor, manga, that solam ding that the nekabla, then you tersam. Turbata, somebody march, then you come back to Sungur. That solemn chamber tops of jailer, then a solemn chamber tops of it, then don't buy let me be the Goswode, that locked on to be a basis or chigore, don't buy let me be, she lost on to be basis or chesita, that solemn chimbikin, tops of jailiada, denigate, solemn chamber tom the dinner, basis cheji or reje, she's an dinner, Yaya, Gombe, Gomberchibe, Rimgi, Tawa de. 동이 유 된지 수유 도배 실라 손제 검주도 규르데스 제가 솔람 집에 내가 솔레요도 되네 동반이라 미비기 동이 무슨도 된지 수유도 거와 제가 된지 수유도 동이 도배 똑바디다 동이라 미비기 실라 손제 공고레스 동반이 미비 실라 신에 줍되네 젤야 하동 공고 도시네 실라 손제 되네게 도시네 줍네 대 동반이를 몇 실라 손제의 파사 계요도 토병도 된 졸람바 차송래 제가 동반이를 미비게 실라 손제의 토병도 거 졸람바 차바래 제 졸람 토바래 지도다 고람고마 초람내야 공만내야 공배도 똑발을 맞서 털친 바래지 제가 솔람 침비에 내가 솔레도 동반이를 미비 실라 손제 주야기 고소제 안냠내 곰 되네 곰네 내게지 동반이를 미비 실라 손제의 게디 톱소나 다 졸람바 차송래 다 동반이를 미비 실라 손제 마토 봐도 아니 동반이를 미비 신의 톱 사동 톱매나 아니 졸람바레마도 졸람바 차요 말이지 다 동반이를 미비 신의 줍 신의 디가네 동반이를 제베 사동 줍네 사동디 귤라 톱여도 되네 아니 그 졸람바 차바래 해서는
The entry point into the path of accumulation is the attainment of uncontrived definite emergence. At that point, the practitioner has achieved the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation has 3 divisions, 3 levels. The point of achieving the path of accumulation, the practitioner has achieved the small level of the path of accumulation. Their primary focus, as mentioned in the previous segment, is study, or as I translated it here, or otherwise as hearing, is to hear and reflect extensively on teachings, and in this way primarily focus on the accumulation of merit. And this is the primary activity from when the path of accumulation is achieved, which is at the small level of the path of accumulation. And they'll grow and develop, attaining the middling level of the path of accumulation, that's the second of 3, and eventually attain the third level, the great level of the path of accumulation. So as they're progressing, the practitioner is progressing through the path of accumulation, their good qualities are growing from a small level to a middling level to a great level. And when they are now on the great level of the path of accumulation, prior to the attainment of the great level of the path of accumulation, the primary focus has been on hearing and reflecting. Now on the great level of the path of accumulation, the primary focus is on meditating. And here, it's primarily meditating on emptiness. So prior to this, the primary focus was the accumulation of merit, now accumulation of wisdom. Again, and I emphasize the word primary as opposed to exclusively. So now the practitioner has attained the great level of the path of accumulation, and they're focusing on meditating on emptiness. In particular, they will already have been meditating on emptiness with calm abiding, and possibly for an extensive period. But this is the primary meditation now, of meditating on emptiness with calm abiding, with the objective to try and realize emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. So they continue, whilst on the great level of the path of accumulation, to meditate on emptiness with calm abiding, trying to also meditate on emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. And when they do, now we go to the text of the next bullet point. As our view of emptiness develops successively, the path of preparation is attained, when emptiness is realized by means of a meaning generality on the basis of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. Therefore, the practitioner on the great level of the path of accumulation has been meditating extensively with calm abiding on emptiness, and in the moment that they realize emptiness, not only with calm abiding, but with calm abiding and the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they have now crossed the boundary and attained the path of preparation. So this then is the boundary for the attainment of the path of preparation, when emptiness is realized with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. Prior to this, the boundary for crossing into the path of accumulation is the attainment of uncontrived bodhicitta. Now, for the second path, the path of preparation, this is attained when realizing emptiness with the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. And this, as the text said, will be a realization by means of a meaning generality.
Semja Tanjo Kobe Dunga Travada, Nichi to Sipik and Lasan Namda Denigi Pa Lucia. Dene Zang Semja Tamji San Yokoba, Tobra Chigi, Sembi, Dangazuge, Chiketusine, Janshu Sem Samda. De Ditone, Dangazuda, that Semja Tamji San Yokoba, Semja Tamji de San Yokoba, Tobala, that Nyomoba Bango Wainza, that Chige, Denigi, and the Tombani, Tenjin Jawa, Jue, Samdane, Gachik, namgin kasi ni shuba na shinda kangla tuba ma tuba rangun tu tu min de cheba che shin du cheba chen da kangla ma rangun ru sawa ni min do sambe sam da jang zo da de ni ge dong ba ni le cheba che du chen de jang do che ya di zo ge da da ning bo ro ji di sha de ji dang zo mang bo she sha sa dong ba ni do ba yin de yuan de yong gu le sa de yong gu yo ba za da yuan de yin a zo le gu wen za de ni ge yuan de yo ba na da dong ba ni do ya de ge chen bo shu re do sambe ge sam da jang zo gang tu du che wa de da zo da ning bo ro ji nga zo nyam su ling go de di ro wa.
The essence of what we've looked at this weekend, bearing in mind where we are in the text, we've covered the presentation on emptiness, what is meant by emptiness, and how to realize emptiness, and what is empty. So all of this has been presented in quite some detail. The purpose of this section is to encourage us to engage in the meditations that have been laid out throughout this text. Here, His Holiness is encouraging us by showing us what lies before us. Should we continue to engage in our meditations on emptiness, accompanied with the companion meditations, this transformative realization of emptiness is what lies before us. It's realization that will transform our refuge, our definite emergence, and our bodhicitta. So I hope then that one takes encouragement from what's presented here to continue to every day engage repeatedly in the same meditation, reflecting on the equality between beings, that we are all the same in wanting lasting stable happiness and freedom from suffering, and there within that one reflects on what are the sufferings of samsara that we long to be freed of, and then they're using that as a basis to generate love and compassion for all beings. Thereafter, the altruistic attitude and bodhicitta itself, and then spend time having generated bodhicitta on meditating on emptiness, because having generated bodhicitta, one has the determination to abandon the afflictions together with the seeds and imprints. And the only way to do that is to meditate on emptiness, and then meditate on emptiness in the ways that you have learned and gained experience of thus far in the text. So that's the essence then of what we've looked at this weekend, the essential meaning, which serves to encourage us to strive, to continue to strive in these meditations. So thank you. Then we can conclude therefore for this weekend. Thank you.